Hi, I'm Michael Hartman.
I'm Yomi Liu.
And I'm Mike Rizzo. And this is OpsCast,
a podcast for marketing ops pros
and RevOps pros.
Created by the Mo Pros, the #1 community for marketing operations professionals.
Tune in to each episode as we chat with real professionals to help elevate you in your marketing operations career.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of OpsCast, brought to you by marketingops.com, powered by all the Mo Pros out there. I am your host, Michael Hartman, flying solo, which is all good. But I am excited to talk with our guest today, Yomi Tejumola. I think I already butchered it, Yomi, so you'll have to correct me again. But about the Evolved, we're going to talk about a topic that is interesting, the Evolved Marketer. Yomi is the founder and CEO of Algo Marketing. Algo Marketing leverages machine learning and automation to empower teams with deeper insights, faster execution, and streamlined operations. He has over a decade of experience in leading the development and deployment of AI and automated marketing solutions. Yomi is a pioneer and visionary in the field of algorithmic marketing. Yomi has a proven track record of delivering innovative and impactful projects using machine learning and automation, such as recommender systems, predictive modeling, and time series forecasting for Google Ads and Google Cloud. Yomi, thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah. All right. So all those times, I think I got your name close to right, but I'm always skeptical of my own pronunciation.
As I said, just pretend you're Japanese and you get it right.
All right. There you go. Hi. I'll do that. All right. So I mentioned in the intro that we're going to be talking about something called the Evolved Marketer. But let's start with a maybe definition. What does that mean?
Sure. Absolutely. So the idea of the Evolved Marketer represents a new breed of marketing professionals who have fully adopted AI and automation, not just as tools to simply speed up existing workflows, but as catalysts for deeper transformation. This transformation comes from the long-term effect of being free from repetitive and mundane tasks to unlock more mental energy for strategic thinking, creativity, and true innovation. Ultimately, the evolved marketer isn't just more productive, they're happier and even more fulfilled. And they're better positioned to thrive, both personally and professionally in this new era of work.
So at the beginning, he says, I think I missed the phrase completely, but it's like fully adopted AI into there. Is it so does it have to be fully adopted, or could it be, could you be like me, who's like dipping my toes in the water? I've come from being a skeptic to I'm a believer that potential. I just haven't spent a lot of time actually using some of the tools.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like evolution, right? There would be different stages of that evolution. A fully evolved marketer would be someone that has, hit that threshold of fully adopting AI and automation. And adoption is the key term there, in the sense that it's not just about you just dipping your toes or just having a few tools here and there. It's you've actually adopted it into your daily routine, rather than it being an extra tool you're using. It is the tool. It is the means by which you actually accomplish your work.
So almost like a habit that just becomes, it's just memory. You don't even have to think about it. Is that kind of the goal? Is what you're saying?
Correct. And it's being also seamlessly embedded or integrated with your existing workflows makes it easier to adopt, right? And it works hand in hand. You adopting it, but also the tool being readily and available there for you to adopt and use.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm sure there are people listening to this who are maybe even not just skeptics about AI, but also concerned about AI. And, what its potential impact is to their job. Will they have a job? Things like that. But maybe even go more at an abstract level, like how, because this, I mean, you said evolved marketer, it feels like this is something that could be bigger than just marketers, right? So how are you seeing, or how have you seen AI impacting human beings in general?
Yeah, I believe the long-term impact of AI would be to catalyze the next evolution of our species. It is a grand statement to make, but if you just hear me out here, I mean,
That is a grand statement.
as we discussed before, so neuroscience shows that when we engage in repetitive tasks, our brains fall into fixed patterns, right? We're running the same mental algorithms every day. We're essentially running on, say, mental autopilot. This repetition solidifies neural connections in our brain, which actually limits our thinking and creativity. However, when you throw AI into the mix and AI takes over the mundane, our brains break free from these repetitive loops. Our brains begin to rewire new neural pathways, which then sparks fresh ideas, creativity, innovation. Now, if you think about this happening over a long period of time, this continuous rewiring, also known as neuroplasticity,
Yep.
can literally reshape our brains, right? Always forming new neural pathways, new ways of connecting the dots. This is actually reshaping our brains over a long period of time, which empowers us to become more adaptive, more inventive, capable of thriving in an ever-changing world. So, yeah, I think that impact of that long-term reshaping of our brains is one of the big catalysts for us in going into this new version of human species that we're approaching.
It's interesting because I'm familiar with neuroplasticity in the context I've usually heard it brought up is actually after a brain injury, right? And going through essentially, I'll call them in quotes, right, exercises that help to either not rebuild the pathways, because once they're kind of broken, they're broken. I understand it in the brain, but you like build back up pathways that have been neglected is the best way, I guess, to think of it. So it's interesting because I think when you and I talked about the idea of neuroplasticity and a beneficial effect of AI, it caught me off guard because it felt like, to me, at least quickly thinking about it, I would have assumed sort of the other effect, right? AI is going to make it that we don't have to think as much, and therefore, like, we'll actually reduce some of those pathways in our brain. So to me, it's a little bit counterintuitive. I mean, was that relatively easy for you to get to that kind of understanding, or is this something that you struggled with as well?
Yeah, yes, actually, in the initial onset of AI coming in, that was my concern and understanding, until we started to experiment and see firsthand how it is actually affecting people, especially in our work with our clients, that we started to notice that, there's actually a new trajectory to where AI could take us, right? The initial onset is that you use AI and then, you throw things in there. You don't have to think much and it gives you outputs and so on, right? However, when you combine AI and automation, right? So there's two key things there. One is the use of AI. The second is the automation part and intelligent automation to help take away those redundant and mundane tasks in our day-to-day life over a consistent period of time. We start to the absence of those things actually start to make us want to create more, to innovate more. It actually gives us that mental space to do these things. Another aspect actually is that to be able to be successful in using AI requires you to be creative and imaginative, right?
Sure.
And that is going to become the new competitive advantage, if you would like, in the workforce. The new competitive advantage wouldn't be the skill you have in a specific subject. It would be how imaginative you are, how creative are you? How imaginative? How much can you push the boundaries of AI to give you some outputs that has never been seen before, right? And because of this, that becomes something people want to tap into a lot more. And then, that neuroplasticity kicks in of wanting to be more imaginative, use that nascent aspect of our brains a lot more. And
I think it's a fascinating idea. Like, as I said, like it feels a bit counterintuitive. But then, for better or worse, I know way more about neuroplasticity and brain function than a general person, because my wife worked, she wasn't a doctor or scientist or anything, but she worked for a brain research place. So I became very aware of how much new stuff we're learning and how little we actually know about how our brains work. So I can only imagine like there's lots of potential there. So you talked about this idea that repetitive tasks kind of go away. And one of the things I think is interesting is that, and I've heard different models for how we perceive our knowledge over time as we become more expert in a task or a subject or something like that. But one of the things is that you said that, like, over time, if we do something on a regular basis, 80% of our lives is work, and that if we're doing that on a daily basis, then 80% of that work is repetitive. So what is the implications of that? I guess I'm going to assume that's mostly, in your eyes, like a net negative, but maybe there's some net positives as well.
Yeah. So the concept comes when you consider that 80% of our conscious adult lives revolve around work. So if you take a set of from the working period of adults, so say between the ages of 21 to 65, average retirement age, and the conscious part of that time, which is the waking hours, 80% of that period revolves around work. And also, when you become, research shows, when you become a seasoned professional in your work or in your art, you spend roughly 80% on a day-to-day on repetitive tasks. Now, the implications of that are profound, because over time, this repetition hardwires our brains into fixed neural pathways, right? Having those fixed neural pathways makes us less flexible and adaptable. Now, when we grow old, and then we have this, our ability to change careers or lifestyle or our mindsets, we say it slows because we're getting old. It's actually not true. It's not just age that makes us less able or less flexible. It's what we call the mental ruts in our brains that have been carved by doing the same thing over and over again, that makes us less flexible, not age. So essentially, that means if 80% of our lives is work and 80% of work is repetitive and mundane, essentially that means we've become human robots, right? We're just running mostly on algorithms, into locked, predictable algorithms that limit our capacity for growth and reinvention.
So it's interesting. So one of the analogies that I've heard about this sort of the way in which the wiring in our brain, for lack of a better term, really the pathways happens over time, and it starts from when you're an infant all the way through, right? Is that the pathways that get used a lot get built up. So those become the freeways, highways in your brain. And the other ones slowly become, dirt roads that have ruts in them, and they're not very efficient. And when you do try to use them, it's super slow. I think so. It's interesting you had the ruts analogy. Yeah, it feels like to me there's also a bit of a risk on doing these repetitive things, is that it also could lead to mistakes or danger. And I was just driving, so it's top of mind, is every few months I'll be driving and it's so rote and I do it all the time that I'll forget to do the simple thing like looking over my shoulder before I change lanes. You know what I mean? And then invariably, I'm going to have a situation where I forget to do that, and somebody's right there, right? And I almost have an accident. Hopefully, almost not have an accident. And it feels like, do you think that's a potential risk too of us doing this repetitive stuff on? So, like, we just sort of we stop paying attention to the details in some ways.
Yes, and that's absolutely. It's due to our environment. When our environment changes and we're fixated on a specific pathway or an algorithm, if that environment in which the algorithm is running changes, then that algorithm is no more useful or functional for that environment, right? So in your example, the environment could have changed, which is it's no longer safe. There's a cyclist or another car, or and so on. And with that change, because you're running your loop of algorithms, then you wouldn't pay attention to that or be able to flexibly adapt to this new environment.
Yeah, so that's I think it's interesting. I think I felt like I was going to come in here and be devil's advocate. I keep finding myself agreeing with you, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Probably. So you mentioned the idea that those who adopt AI kind of eliminates, because in automation, AI and automation, it sounds like it's the combination that really is the game changer, would enable us to, not spend as much of our time on repetitive tasks and therefore lead to more creative ability. So maybe talk through a little more about like how would that mechanism work? How do you see that playing out? And have you seen it playing out yet?
Hey everyone, Mike Rizzo here, CEO of marketingops.com and co-host of OpsCast. I've got a little secret to share with you, something that's been one of the best kept perks of our community until now. At marketingops.com, we've built a hiring program that's changing the game for marketing operations recruitment, and we're finally sharing it with the world. Our community is over 22,000 strong, and within that, we have over 4,400 members who are actively and passively seeking new opportunities. These are seasoned professionals with skills and experience spanning platforms like HubSpot, Pardot, Marketo, and so much more. Plus, we can help you fine-tune your outreach, targeting exactly the right candidates by region, years of experience, seniority level, or even agency experience. But here's the real cherry on top. When you hire through our program, your new team member gets a free membership or a virtual ticket to our annual conference. From day one, they're not just stepping into a new role, they're getting access to the training, networking, and support they need to hit the ground running. So if you're ready to unlock this incredible opportunity, it's time to let this secret out. Visit marketingops.com and find your next star teammate today. Thanks for listening, and as always, keep optimizing.
Yeah. So you mean in terms of how the
I think there's a step here to me. Like, okay, I think I bought into the idea that like the repetitive tasks create ruts in our brain wiring, which leads to maybe a lack of creativity. I'm not totally. I'm trying to understand the mechanism that goes, okay, from if we can free ourselves from some of those repetitive tasks through AI and automation, then how does that then generate more creative capability? That's really what I'm trying to understand.
Right. So if you imagine, I mean, what we've seen, if you imagine, you're, in the workplace, you have targets or OKRs or KPIs to achieve, and as part of those targets, a lot of the work you do on a day-to-day to achieve those targets, could involve perhaps say repetitive tasks like creating reports or creating your weekly presentations to show, progress and so on, rather than how to actually find new ways, or how to actually thinking about new ways in achieving those targets, right? When I think, so coming back to your question, work has become very, process oriented, for lack of better terms. In order to get things done, simple things like, hey, as a marketer, I need to launch a campaign targeting this audience. The amount of process involved to get there takes up all the mental energy that would be rather used in finding, creative or innovative ways of launching that campaign. So what people would resort to is just the
repeating what's worked in the past, right?
Repeating what's worked in the past. Okay, I'm just going to do. So today we have a set number of channels that we use for campaigns, right? Events, email, podcasts,
sure,
webinars, and so on. But then in this new age, perhaps we can actually start to think about a new type of channel, a new way in connecting the dots to achieve that campaign. So it's a function of capacity, both mental capacity and your capacity to achieve things, and just the amount of process that's involved in actually achieving or trying to accomplish a task.
Yeah, so it's just, I think what occurs to me now is that really the big differentiator here is time, right? So regardless of whether or not you think it actually has an impact on your brain connections directly that leads to creativity, you are freeing yourself up for time to do something else. Now, I could see one argument where that means you go and it's a brave new world kind of thing, right? You go, you just do crazy stuff that's not necessarily productive, or you can start to use that time to look for more insights, come up with new creative ways of achieving those goals, new ways of communicating, like all that kind of stuff. And I think so it feels like even if you don't necessarily, this is a message, I guess, for the audience, right? Even if you're not totally bought in or understand the mechanisms, the way your brain can or would change through this, if nothing else, you're buying back time to have the opportunity to do those things more creatively. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. But I would also add to that, and just to add to why it's not just time, right? There is a time element, but there's also, it's not just repetitive tasks, but also mundane tasks. And mundane tasks are those tasks that are boring, or at least the brain finds boring.
I have such a hard time just getting started on those, and they're part of day-to-day work. I get it, but it's so hard for me.
Yeah, and it's taken that away. Even if some of those mundane tasks are not time consuming, the mental energy and the mental drain that it sucks away from you from doing mundane tasks, even if it's not time consuming, frees your brain up for creativity. Because it frees your brain up for creativity because you are happier, right? If you don't have any mundane tasks in your day, you would generally be happier to get through your day and do work. And that those energy levels of happiness or serotonin you have leads to things like creativity or imagination and these other elements of how we think, right? Rather than just thinking linearly.
No, I think that energy one is an important one. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I do know that the brain consumes a disproportionate number of calories and energy from what our body generates than anything else. And so if you're using it up with mundane tasks, it just leaves, if you assume that your energy levels have more or less a fixed level amount in a given period of time, then you're taking it away from other potential uses, right? So it's that's a good point about the mundane task too. So, so one of the things you shared with me before also is that at Algo Marketing, you're doing research with your workforce, on your workforce. And if I understood it right, you are evaluating the impact on productivity and stress levels, which is interesting when mundane tasks are automated. So getting back to that mundane task. So first off, did I understand that right? And then what have you learned from this research that you're doing?
Yep, you're right. Absolutely right. So we are evolving our workforce by doing this research on the impacts of implementing AI and automation on productivity and stress levels. So we started with our client services team because they tend to have, they would be the team that we saw that would tend to have a lot of different types of tasks and interaction, both internally and on the client level. It's also one of the teams where we have the most individuals in. So it was a good, research / testing place to do the test and research. So what we did is worked with each member of this team to evaluate and categorize daily tasks. We categorized them across two axes. One axis, say, if you have the y-axis being the level of repetition or mundaneness of the task. And then on the x-axis, you have the level of impact. Level of impact in the sense of how impactful that task is to a KPI or a performance objective.
Okay.
We then, when we did that mapping, and we then, in terms of priority in what types of problems or tasks to automate, we then focused on the tasks on the upper right quadrant, right? So in that axis, if you split it into 4 quadrants, the ones at the upper right are the ones with high impacts and also a high level of mundane / repetition.
Okay.
The ones on the upper left, but slightly closer to the middle, were also very interesting as well, because that would have that would usually have high mundaneness and repetition, not as much impact, but we found that those were also like low-hanging fruits, right?
Okay.
There will be tasks such as, emails, like things you do around communication, so emails, reports, and so on. Now, in implementing and automating these tasks, what we've learned so far, one key thing we've learned is around adoption and adoption of these tools or solutions that we implemented. Now, AI, just the fact that user adoption is the key driver to success in any type of AI implementation was a resounding factor in what we've learned. And that's because AI predominantly relies on learning. Right.
Makes sense.
You sell any AI tool that you launch, would seldom come out perfect, right? It's just like a baby. The initial results of any tool would come out speaking gibberish, right? And it takes a while with a lot of training and learning for that AI to start to spit out relevant results or results that are useful to the users. So if adoption isn't there, adoption is the driver of learning, right, for the AI. So adoption is actually the key ingredient for an AI success, to learn successfully. And if adoption isn't there, then that tool would fall into the category of this is just another tool that we have to use. It's not being adopted, and it will just continue on that sort of gibberish path for a long period of time. So what we have to do is really find creative ways in increasing user adoption, rather than just, no matter how amazing the tool is, you have to find creative ways to get user adoption.
Right.
And one key thing is, how do you ensure that you implement it in a way that it seamlessly integrates with the existing workflows, where they do not have to go away from how they're currently doing what they're doing, where it's actually embedded and really integrated in the existing workflow. So that was a key lesson there, in which where we had to re-engineer the solutions to ensure it was properly embedded. Sorry, did you have sounded like you had a question there?
I'm not sure if you were getting there or not, but so I could see how, although not totally easy, but doable to measure productivity or outcomes of some sort. How did you? So first off, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone in the team who's being asked to go through this. You have to have a baseline for the productivity and output, but also you mentioned the stress level. So I think I might feel a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, trepidatious about sharing with my employer, right? How stressed I am. So I'm curious. So one is like, how did you even go about assessing that, or did you even initially, and if you did, like, how was that received?
Yeah. So on the productivity side, one of the things we measured was how email follow-ups, right, and how quickly people were responding or following up, or responding to other types of communications. And we did see an improvement there in the email follow-up / response times. In general, people were responding much quicker, which led to more efficiency, more productivity, because it means people are actually moving at a quicker pace. We're able to measure this even, in your email clients. You can see how quickly, or the response times between emails and parties. So that's one of the key things we found in our initial research as improvement. On the stress level side, what we did was we had a questionnaire, not a direct questionnaire asking people how stressed they are. We had to work with a human behavior specialist or psychologist to create this questionnaire, which it's like a stress level indicator or marker. So these are leading questions, and you combine everything. It has a score that it gives you, and then the score gives you the level of change in the person's not necessarily stress level, but in their kind of like their
like the indicators of stress.
Drive. Yeah, indicators of stress, or also indicators of drive, or how motivated they are.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was more on it's harder to, or you wouldn't, what we were advised is, don't create something that measures stress. Create something that measures the opposite, which would ultimately.
I was just like, my head was just there. Like, that's like, you don't. Yeah. Okay. That's the positive question, not the negative question.
Exactly. So we're able to see the improvements of those, positive markers over time. We had, before the tools were implemented, we had a questionnaire sent on a weekly basis, 4 weeks. And then after implementation, then we have this questionnaire sent that they fill out on over 4 weeks on a weekly basis, and then measured the impact of those. And we did see positive movements, positive trends in people being happier, more satisfied with their work.
I think it's great. So another thing that we talked about is that automating some of the mundane and repeatable tasks, and it also will enable leaders to, I think the word you used is, orchestrate their teams and their workforce more effectively. So what is that? Maybe describe what that is, or what it looks like either at Algo Marketing or with your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So this concept comes when we think about the evolved workforce, right? And the evolved workforce goes beyond the impact on the individual worker. It's the impact it has on the team or an organization, which is actually more profound when you have that at a combination level. So at Algo Marketing, we created an AI-driven next best action solution. And what this does is uses historical data on actions and the results of those actions to predict what the next best action is to drive a specific outcome. It could be to drive conversions or to create more opportunities or upsell and so on. So we use this solution to provide marketers with next best actions recommendations at an individual level. So, for example, a partner marketing manager within a specific region or territory who was responsible for a specific segment of the audience, say SMB, would be able to get recommendations on what the next sequence of marketing actions in the form of campaigns, outreach, or even assets to send out that will drive conversion rates or that will drive whatever the target is for that individual. It could be I need X number of opportunity or MQLs this quarter and so on. Now, on a team level, that's when you then have the next best actions when you incorporate team level objectives. Like for this team or for this organization, this is the goal for these are the OKRs or these are the targets. You're then able to ensure that those next best actions that are sent to the individual members all align to the team objectives as well. So for marketing leaders, this gives them a much more effective way to orchestrate their team to a unified goal, knowing that all these recommended actions not only drive results at an individual level, but also you have the team's OKRs and targets and objectives baked in. The next best actions is able to drive those recommended actions based off of those, but also based on the more information you give the AI. Where we tested is, for example, if you connect it to Workday as a platform, where Workday has things like people's time offs and their certifications and their general skill sets. Those next best actions are also able to be customized, or it's able to distribute the actions appropriately to the right person based on their skill sets, based on their persona, or even based on their time off when they're likely to be off,
Sure.
and so on.
So you could train this to take advantage of constraints like time off and things like that, as well as individual people's strengths on the team. So if you have a particular task and one of two people are available to do it, but one tends to be stronger in whatever that activity is, you could route it to that person as opposed to the other person, assuming all those things being equal. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, I'm quite sure, but you're nodding, so I'm going to take that as affirmative.
Yeah, correct. And if you think about it, it also gives a less invasive way of distributing tasks based on people's strengths and weaknesses, as you've mentioned, right? If that, in a traditional sense, if a manager had various tasks to apportion to the teams, and the direct apportionment of those tasks to say, hey, you do this task because you're strong at this and weak at this and so on, is having a machine do that is less invasive, right? Because you're not directly pointing out those things.
Yeah, I So the reason I've got this look on my face here is that I could see that I could see that as a way of abdicating responsibility as a leader, though, too. But at the same time, and maybe this is more of a question. So oftentimes as leaders, right, we've got people who are maybe skilled at one thing, but want to grow in some other skill or experience. So could an engine like this also be trained or superseded in some way to accommodate that growth for individuals, not just based on who's going to be best at doing something based on past performance or availability or whatever?
Yeah, that's definitely a good concept. Baking in those additional constraints as to what, don't just send the tasks to the best person, right? So accommodate for growth. These tasks would be good for this person because they can grow well in that area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can add all these different constraints into it as well. Another thing is that he also adds that level of, or reduces subjectivity in apportioning tasks, right? It's slightly more objective. And so you don't get, you get a more equal, everyone gets equal opportunity in the team.
Yeah, I can see that, right? There's less potential maybe for favoritism or the opposite of favoritism, right? So this is all really interesting. Some of this may not surprise you based on what some of my questions already, but so I guess 2-part questions. Like what do you see happening in the near not too distant future in terms of this being adopted and incorporated into organizations? And then do you see any potential risks with things like privacy and things like that? I think the reason I ask, so a lot of this stuff is monitoring what I'm doing, what I'm saying, my behavior, right? And so,
so for the first question on the not too distant future, what we could see happening is the concept of digital twins applying to humans, right? So we've had this digital twin concept that has applied to physical assets and so on. But now we would be able to get a human digital twin where you'd have an AI version of your work self. So being able to train an AI in how you do your work, the way your skill sets, your expertise, and so on, would become one of the key things in the near future. And that's something you'd be able to take, for example, from job to job, right? It's not just you.
I was going to ask you, is this something that's going to end up following? Because I heard a talk about AI at an engineering school where I'm on an advisory board, and somebody was talking about AI, and they talked about it in this context of students having a AI digital version of themselves that would go along with them through their education. And so that would have been my next, that's the next obvious evolution, is it goes along with them in their career. So, are you seeing that kind of stuff happening already?
I am seeing that. I'm seeing people really using GPT, creating custom GPTs of their persona for various reasons. One, to respond to emails and communications in the way they would. That's like the first part. You would see people that will, creating presentations and so on, creating a custom GPT to interact or create or do work in the way they would do work, not just in the way a general LLM would do it. So you're definitely seeing that, and I think that concept will really become, grander and grander. People training for video, for audio as well, and then you have
the deep fake thing worries me a little bit, but okay.
But I think at the very least, we're definitely seeing on communication side, emails, follow-ups. creating reports. And on this second question you talked about was around privacy and monitoring.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, it is. The way there is already so much data on an organization level that could be that can be used, right, to create or train an AI model that people would have opted in, like data from Salesforce or Workday and the marketing campaigns and so on. But the concern comes where you started to look into things like email data, meetings, and that sort of interaction level data, and then using that data to train a model, right? But what I see happening is that people will be able to opt into those to that data to not be used for training. And in order to do that, they would need to have each person would need to have their own private, kind of like a private AI training cloud, right? And hopefully we get to the point where computational power becomes cheaper, becomes less expensive for individuals to actually have their own AI locally, rather than being run on the cloud.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be a complicated thing to figure out. I mean, the sort of maybe not quite analogous situation is salespeople who move from place to place, right? And I would argue part of why B2B CRM data is bad is because salespeople they want to hoard the information that they think is their competitive advantage. So if they go somewhere else, right, they're with what used to be called their Rolodex, right? Their trusted contacts and things like that. So, and that's a value point. So I can see where this is going to come to, like, we're going to have to figure that out. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just, there's a lot of people out there smarter than me that probably figured this out. Yomi, this has been,
for example,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, for example, Apple, in their Apple Intelligence, they coined, I can't remember what word they used, something around personal intelligence or something around the lines where it's taking the data, your interaction data on the phone, it's being used to train the model, but it's training, that model is run locally on your device or on a private cloud that only you have access to.
Yeah. Still requires a bit of trust, right? I mean, at the end of the day, these are all trade-offs, right? Is a benefit to any one person worth the trade-off of exposing some data or activity that you might not otherwise want to, right? I think that's everyone's tolerance is, it's like risk, right? Everyone's tolerance for that is going to be different. Fascinating stuff. My mind is like still racing, and I wish we had more time, but we're going to have to wrap it up. If folks want to follow up on this conversation or something with you or the folks at Algo Marketing, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can reach out to us via our website, is algomarketing.com. Either on our website, you can find us on LinkedIn as well. But just search for Algo Marketing anywhere you are. You'll definitely find us.
Sounds good. Yomi, thank you so much. This is, like I said, my mind is full of all kinds of stuff now. So this is the kind of conversation I love and hate at the same time, because it'll be hard to concentrate the rest of the day.
Well, it was lovely having this conversation with you, Michael. I
appreciate
really enjoyed my time.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. And thanks again to our audience for continuing to support us. If you have subjects you want to hear about, or guests you want us to talk to or want to be a guest, feel free to reach out to Naomi, Mike, or me, and we'd be happy to talk to you about that. Until next time, bye, everybody.